Are you currently trying to decide between a spec'd up M1 Mac Mini or the brand new Mac Studio? One of those options will cost you a lot of money, while the other one could save you a lot of money. Let's work out what's best for you. Hello and welcome back to Mark Ellis Reviews, and thank you for subscribing if you have, and if you haven't subscribed, the button is just down there. So last week, Apple introduced a brand new Mac, the Mac Studio. And as great as that computer looks, it is a bit troubling for the people that were waiting for a new version of the Mac Mini. You see, as wonderful as this M1 Mac Mini is, I pretty much built this business on it. I did 80 videos on Final Cut Pro on this thing. It is due a bit of an upgrade. And the rumors leading up to last week's event did suggest that we were going to get some kind of new Mac Mini, whether it be an M2 version or an M1 Pro, M1 Max version. None of that transpired. Instead, we got the Mac Studio, which is quite clearly aimed at the professional market and has a professional price tag to match. So if you need a new Mac now and you had your sights set on an upgraded version of the M1 Mac Mini, now that that isn't here, what are you going to do? Before we get into which Mac is right for you out of the M1 Mac Mini and the Mac Studio, a very quick note from the wonderful sponsor of today's video, Trend Micro. Trend Micro are behind a wonderful piece of software called Cleaner One Pro. It's something I use virtually every week on all of my Macs, and it's even useful on brand new Macs. For example, when I first got my 24-inch iMac, I ran Cleaner One Pro and it found 2 gig of stuff that I just didn't need. Deleted it, done. Cleaner One Pro also has a brilliant duplicate photos feature as well, where you can sniff out the photos you've taken multiple times and very quickly get rid of those duplicates. And it's really good for managing your apps on your Mac as well. So there's a really good startup manager where you can choose exactly what starts up when your Mac boots up. There's also a great app removal tool, which is actually really useful on macOS. This has always been a bugbear with mine on Macs, where removing apps isn't as simple as it looks. You can right click on the application and delete it, but that doesn't always get rid of the app completely. There's also files left behind that you don't know that are there. It's just a pain. With Cleaner One Pro, it's got a brilliant app manager where you can select the apps you want to remove and it will get rid of all of the files associated with those apps. There's also a great little tool at the top of your screen where you can see CPU usage, memory performance. You can even run a quick clean from there as well. But it really is that cleaning feature in Cleaner One Pro, as you guess, which is, I think, is its crowning glory, really. It just helps you find those massive files that you don't know are taking up space and get rid of them. So a big thanks again to Trend Micro for sponsoring this video, and if you want to check out Cleaner One Pro, just click the link in my description. When it comes to the M1 Mac Mini versus the Mac Studio, it sounds like a daft comparison, and it is to a degree, but I know why you're trying to decide between those two computers. But it makes sense to start with the pricing, because what you're probably doing at the minute is thinking, can I get by with a kind of spec'd up, maxed out version of the M1 Mac Mini or the base level ish version of the Mac Studio? The problem is there's quite a big price difference between those two computers. So I've got my notes, there's lots of numbers involved here, so bear with me. So the base level Mac Mini is $699. For that you get an 8-core CPU, 8-core GPU, 8 gigs of unified memory, and 256 gig of storage. That is still a superb machine. It will get most people by in terms of normal computing tasks. Mine is the spec'd up 16 gig version, which takes it up to about $1,099. So it adds a bit on, but it's worth it if you want the maxed out version of the M1 Mac Mini. By comparison, the base level Mac Studio, which includes the M1 Max chip, is £1,999. And that gives you a 10-core CPU, 24-core GPU, 32 gig of unified memory, and 512 gig of storage. But they're vastly different animals, these two computers. For instance, if you spec the Mac Studio up as much as you can, it comes to £7,999. Right, performance. Now the 16 gig M1 Mac Mini that I use to produce 80 videos for this channel is a very powerful computer. I think at £1,100 it offers the most bang for buck when it comes to a headless desktop Mac. All you have to do is pair it with a great monitor. I did that with a 34-inch ultra wide. You could also do it obviously with the Studio display, but if you do that, you end up with a fantastic Mac platform. And certainly if your experience up until now has only been with Intel Macs, you won't believe what this thing can do. Now, by comparison, the Mac Studio, again, is a different beast. And although I don't have one in the studio at the moment, I have been using the 16-inch MacBook Pro for the last few months, and that has the M1 Max chip in it that you get in the base level Mac Studio. So I know what that thing can do, and trust me, I cannot max out or even really approach what that computer is capable of. So making that leap from the standard M1 chip to the M1 Max, alone, that is a big, big leap, and something which most people, unless you're doing really, really intensive video work or audio work, programming work, you're not going to experience the benefits of that chip. And as for the M1 Ultra, that is two M1 Max chips soldered together, so you've got double the power of a single M1 Max chip. It's ridiculously powerful. There is a market for it, but it's very, very small. And I think if you're watching this video and you're trying to work out whether to buy the M1 Mac Mini or the Mac Studio, the M1 Ultra is just not for you. So we can swipe that option off the table straight away. It's also worth bearing in mind that all of these M1 chips, whether it's the M1 in this or the M1 Max, the M1 Pro, or even the M1 Ultra, they all feature the same single core performance. And by that, I mean if you're doing regular, normal computer tasks on any of these computers, they won't feel any different. So if we took a complete base level spec M1 MacBook Air and placed it next to a completely spec'd out £8,000 monster of an M1 Ultra Mac Studio on the right hand side, they would both feel identical if you're just doing email, web surfing, that kind of stuff. These chips only feel quicker when you start putting those multi-cores to use. So what about future-proofing? Well, you would be forgiven for thinking that a Mac Studio is going to offer you a better long-term investment than an M1 Mac Mini, but I don't think it's quite as clear-cut as that. For instance, I could carry on using the M1 Mac Mini to make videos for this channel, no problem at all. It wasn't kind of on its last legs, it was still performing really well. The only reason I'm now using that 16-inch MacBook Pro is because I wanted to review the M1 Max chip in it, and this is my job really, so I need to do that kind of thing. So I'm not a typical use case. I could have got away with using this computer for another 2, possibly 3 years. Now the 16-inch MacBook Pro feels the same. That feels like it could go on for a number of years and not cause me any trouble whatsoever. But it was much more expensive than this. So if I could go back in time and only buy one of those two computers to run this business, it would be without question the Mac Mini, because it delivers so much more return in terms of a long-term investment. So who needs the M1 Mac Mini? You, possibly. The fact that you're watching this video suggests to me that you've been thinking about buying one of these for quite a while. What's thrown you is the announcement of the Mac Studio. That's completely sent you off course. And the fact that you've reached this point of the video also suggests to me that you probably don't do the type of intensive work that makes sense for a Mac Studio. So if that's the case, I would save yourself quite a lot of money and just buy a spec'd up M1 Mac Mini. We don't know when this is going to be replaced, or even if it will be replaced. There's rumours about an M2 chip being put into it at some stage. If that happens, that may not happen this year. That might happen next year. There's always going to be something new and fancy around the corner, and quite often with Apple, that thing may not be around the corner. So I wouldn't keep hanging on waiting for this thing to be updated. I think you know deep down that the Mac Studio isn't right for you. So trust me, save yourself a lot of money. Get the Mac Mini, spec it up as much as you can, and you will not be disappointed. Who needs a Mac Studio? I think this falls into two brackets, and it's the two brackets that I always talk about on this channel. The first one are the people who just want it, and that's fine, even if you're not going to use it for what it's intended, but you just love the look of it, you love the name of it, you've got the money for it. Just get it. The other bracket is the people who are actually going to make use of all that power. If you're doing loads and loads of multiple streams of 4K video editing, or you're really getting into audio production, or perhaps you do a lot of development in deep machine learning and need lots of memory and all that sort of stuff, then I think you know that you need the Mac Studio. The price difference between the base level Mac Mini and the base level Mac Studio is £1,300. They are very different computers. But the key takeaway I think today is the fact that they both perform identically in single core performance. For normal everyday computing tasks, you will not notice a difference. And I think 95% of the people watching this video will be more than happy with a Mac Mini. And if you've still got some time, keep watching for a link to my full reaction of that March event. But until next time, thank you as always for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.